All right, let's dive in. Today, we're tackling a big one, folks choosing the right IPS. Specifically, we're looking at Workato versus Boomi, and we've got a ton of info to unpack: battle cards, technical docs, even some juicy user feedback.
Yeah, we're going to go beyond just features and really dig into how these platforms actually perform in the real world. Think speed, power, resilience. Can it handle the unexpected? And of course, we'll break down that all-important cost.
Because, yeah, anyone can toss around buzzwords.
Let's start with speed, because time is money. Workato really pushes this idea of speed. They boast about having over 8,600 pre-built integrations, recipes, AI tools. They even suggest that even business users can build the automations themselves. Is that realistic or just, marketing hype?
It's an interesting approach, right? They're seemingly targeting two different users: developers who are working on those complex integrations, but also business users who maybe have simpler automation needs. So picture this: a marketing team sets up an automated email campaign without having to bug IT. Yeah, so less reliance on maybe already really busy IT departments. I can see the appeal. So what about Boomi? They talk a lot about easy deployments, but they seem to take a more traditional development route. Does that automatically mean they're slower?
Not necessarily. Boomi has some cool time-saving tricks of its own. They've got one-click deployments, a system that automatically packages up dependencies, which are basically all those supporting files an application needs to run smoothly. But, and here's where it gets a little tricky, Boomi leans pretty heavily on something called groovy scripting. It can be super powerful, but it requires specialized knowledge. So if you don't have a groovy guru on your team, you're going to have to train someone up or, hire a consultant, and that adds time and cost.
So maybe some hidden costs right off the bat. We've also got this customer quote here. They said they were able to recreate a complex integration in Workato in just a few hours, something that took them weeks in Boomi.
Yeah, and that kind of anecdotal feedback does suggest that, at least in certain situations, Workato could have an edge when it comes to speed. Really highlights how real-world implementation can be very different from what you see on paper.
Okay, so speed is great, but can these platforms actually handle, some heavy lifting? Workato throws around a lot of terms: connectivity, workflow and process automation, API management, event streams, and data orchestration. What does that even mean in plain English?
Basically, they're trying to be your one-stop shop for any integration or automation need you could possibly have, right? Connecting apps, orchestrating those complex workflows, it's all in their toolkit. And they really stress this idea that the platform is robust enough to handle those mission-critical tasks. They've got built-in error handling and scalability. Think of it like this: you're running a huge online sale, and suddenly you get a flood of traffic. Can your system handle it without crashing?
So they want to be the one-stop shop for all things integration. What about Boomi? Their marketing materials talk about good breadth of functionality, especially for on-premise solutions.
Yeah, Boomi's been around a while, especially in that on-premise world, which can be a huge plus if that's what you're already heavily invested in. But a lot of Boomi's functionality comes from acquisitions they've made over the years. So there's some concern that all those different pieces may not be as tightly integrated as a platform that was built from the ground up. And the battle card also flags potential weaknesses in their security and some, well, let's call them aggressive billing practices. So those are definitely things you'll want to dig into a bit deeper.
Interesting. We've got some user feedback that kind of echoes those concerns. One user told us that they were able to solve a complex problem in Workato so easily that they hadn't even dared to try in Boomi because it just seemed too complex.
I think that's a great example of how user perception can really impact a platform's effectiveness. If people are intimidated by a tool or just find it too difficult to use, they're probably not going to use it to its full potential.
Okay, so speed and power are essential, but what happens when things inevitably go wrong? Right. That's where resilience comes in. Workato talks a lot about their built-in automatic scaling, no downtime for updates and patches, and robust automatic error handling. Sounds pretty impressive.
Yeah, those are definitely all mission-critical features if you're trying to keep your operations running smoothly. So imagine this: you're running that big online sale, suddenly there's a surge in traffic. Automatic scaling means that, in theory, Workato should be able to handle that without breaking a sweat. And no downtime for updates means that your systems can stay up and running even during routine maintenance.
So trying to minimize those moments where everything crashes and everyone panics, Boomi also highlights their easy deployments and environment extensions to help ensure smooth operations.
Yeah, and those are definitely features that contribute to resilience. But there are some caveats. Boomi seems to rely on external load balancers, which are basically like traffic cops directing data flow. And that's just another potential point of failure. And if you're running Boomi on your own servers, security scans can actually cause downtime. Plus, unlike Workato, Boomi users are responsible for their own backups. So that could impact how quickly you're able to recover from a problem.
So potentially more responsibility on the user's shoulders. And we've got a customer quote here praising Workato's world-class support, which they contrasted with a, well, let's just say, less than stellar experience they had with Boomi support. I have a feeling good support plays a big role in the overall resilience of a system.
Oh, absolutely. When something goes wrong, having a responsive and knowledgeable support team can make a huge difference in how quickly you're able to get back up and running.
All right, let's talk about everyone's favorite topic, cost. Both Workato and Boomi claim to be cost-effective. But how do their pricing models actually work in practice? Workato really emphasizes efficiency for developers and reducing reliance on those expensive consultants.
Yeah, their argument is basically that faster development, being able to have less technical users handle some tasks, that all translates to lower costs overall. They also really highlight their built-in scalability, meaning you shouldn't necessarily have to pay for expensive infrastructure upgrades as your business grows.
Okay, so they're trying to kind of bake cost-effectiveness into the platform itself. Makes sense. What about Boomi? They have this connector-based pricing model, right?
Yeah, and that's where things can get a little tricky. So connector-based pricing means you're paying based on the number of connectors you're using, basically the bridges between your different applications. It sounds pretty straightforward, but as your needs grow, you're going to need more connectors and the costs can really start to add up. The battle card also mentions concerns about unexpected upcharges for cloud usage and high administrative overhead. So those are things that can definitely inflate your cost.
Definitely something to be mindful of. We also have a customer here who said that they found Workato's recipe-based pricing much easier to understand and potentially more cost-effective than Boomi's Atom executor-based pricing, whatever that means.
It really underscores the importance of transparency, right? You want a pricing model that you can actually understand and predict, so you can budget accurately for your integration needs.
Okay, so we've covered speed, power, resilience, cost, all super important factors when you're choosing an IPaas. But there's another element that I think we need to talk about, and that's the user experience.
Absolutely. User experience can have a huge impact on how effectively people are actually able to use a platform. If it's clunky, frustrating, it can slow down development, lead to errors, and even have an impact on security.
And we've heard some rumblings that Boomi's user experience isn't exactly, the smoothest. Users often complain about the complexity of their transformation maps, which are essentially the rules for how data is manipulated. That reliance on manual data manipulation can be really time-consuming and error-prone.
Whereas Workato consistently gets praised for its intuitive interface, the ease of use. We have a bunch of customer quotes here talking about how users felt empowered to solve problems in Workato that they wouldn't even attempt in Boomi.
Which really speaks to the importance of user experience. A platform that's actually enjoyable to use can actually make people more productive and creative.
For sure. It also impacts morale. If you're constantly battling a platform that's frustrating you, that can breed resentment and people just don't want to use the technology.
And on that note, we've got this hilarious quote from a user who gushed about how much they love Workato's support team and compared that to the frustratingly slow response times they experience with Boomi. It's a good reminder that behind all this technology, there are real people, and those interactions can make or break the whole experience.
It sounds like Workato's really winning people over with that, that user-friendly approach. And happy users are productive users, right?
Absolutely. But choosing an IPaas isn't just about vibes, right? We got to look at the big picture. We've explored speed, power, resilience, costs, kind of the core stuff. What are some of the key takeaways so far?
I think Workato is shaping up to be a really strong contender, especially for businesses that really need that speed and developer friendliness. Their AI-powered tools and that whole focus on empowering not just the technical folks, but also the business users. That can really streamline things. And their commitment to resilience with those features, the automatic scaling, the downtime-free updates, that's a huge plus for those mission-critical operations.
Plus, their pricing model seems, pretty transparent. No one likes getting hit with those surprise fees. But let's not count Boomi out just yet. They have a long history in the integration space, and they're definitely a strong player, especially in that on-premise world.
Right, yeah. If you've got a lot invested in that on-premise infrastructure, Boomi's expertise there could be a real deciding factor. However, that reliance on acquired solutions, those potential security concerns, and the more complex pricing model, those are all things you really have to weigh carefully.
So for you, the listener, right, how do you take all this information and actually make a decision that's right for your needs?
It really boils down to your priorities.
Mm.
Do you need a platform that's up and running fast, even if that means sacrificing some customization? Workato, with its focus on speed and that ease of use, might be a good fit there. Is having that rock-solid on-premise support a must-have, even if it means maybe a steeper learning curve, potential cost complexities? Maybe Boomi's a better fit.
Yeah, it's almost like, choosing between a nimble speedboat and a sturdy cargo ship. Both can get you where you need to go, but the journeys are going to be quite different.
Absolutely. And don't forget about the importance of user experience, even company culture. You're going to be working with this platform and the company behind it for a long time, hopefully. So you really want to choose a partner that aligns with your team's way of working, their values.
Speaking of partners, let's talk about a key aspect of TCO, this whole idea of shadow IT. We touched on how Workato empowers business users to build automations, but that can lead to what's called shadow IT, where departments are building their own solutions without really involving IT, right?
Yeah, it's a valid concern. Shadow IT can create security vulnerabilities, data silos, and eventually just turn into an integration nightmare. If you're leaning towards Workato, you're going to have to think about how you balance empowering those business users with still maintaining some control from the IT side.
Yeah. Boomi, with its more traditional development approach, might seem less prone to shadow IT. But I don't think any platform is totally immune, right? Any platform that allows for customization could potentially lead to those unauthorized solutions popping up.
Right, exactly. The key is to have clear policies, good governance, regardless of the platform. Everyone needs to understand the process for building and deploying integrations, clear lines of communication between IT and the business units.
Oh, and documentation. A well-documented integration is so much easier to manage, troubleshoot, and hand off if somebody leaves, right? Nobody wants to be stuck trying to decipher a bunch of messy code.
Oh, for sure. Documentation it's often overlooked, but it's so crucial for a healthy and sustainable integration ecosystem.
We've talked about technical features, the costs, but let's not forget the human element, right? A successful IPaas implementation really depends on people understanding and embracing the platform.
Training and ongoing support are absolutely essential. No matter which platform you choose, you've got to make sure your team has the resources to learn the system, to troubleshoot when things go wrong, and really get the most out of the platform.
And think about how the platform fits with your team's existing skills and workflows. If you've got a bunch of developers who love to code, Boomi's groovy-based approach, maybe it's not a big deal. But if you're aiming for more, like, citizen development, Workato's visual drag-and-drop interface, that might be a better fit.
It's about that balance, right? Finding the sweet spot between the technical capabilities and how user-friendly it is. And don't forget, user adoption is an ongoing thing. You don't just train people once and they magically become experts. Provide that ongoing support. Build a culture of learning, collaboration, and celebrate those wins along the way.
Now, another crucial piece of TCO, the cost of downtime. We've talked about how both platforms offer features to minimize downtime, but those hiccups happen, right? How do you even begin to figure out the impact of a system outage on your business?
Oh, that's a tough one. And the answers are going to be different for everybody, right? It depends on your business, the specific processes affected. A manufacturing plant, relying on real-time data from their equipment, that's going to be a way different impact than a marketing team whose email campaign gets delayed for an hour.
So how can businesses even try to calculate that cost of downtime?
There are actually frameworks, calculators online that can help you estimate that financial impact. They usually look at things like lost revenue, reduced productivity, recovery costs, even reputational damage.
So it's not just about like the immediate technical fix, it's about the ripple effect, right? How that downtime impacts the whole organization.
Exactly. And those intangible costs, like the stress everyone feels, the employees, the customers, that can be hard to put a number on. But it definitely impacts morale and loyalty.
So when you're looking at Workato and Boomi, consider their track record. How reliable are they? What's their uptime like? Look at those service level agreements, the SLAs, to understand their guarantees for availability and how quickly they'll respond when you need help.
Yeah, and look into the maturity of their support infrastructure. Is there a dedicated team available 24/7? Do they offer proactive monitoring, alerts, trying to prevent those issues before they even happen? Those are all important things to consider when you're trying to figure out, okay, what's the potential cost if things go wrong?
Okay, so we've really gotten into the weeds of TCO. But let's zoom out for a minute, look at the big picture. Beyond features and specs, How can you assess the long-term impact of these platforms on your company culture? If you choose Workato over Boomi or the other way around, could that subtly influence how your teams work, the skills they focus on, even their overall job satisfaction?
That's a fantastic question, and one that often gets missed in the rush to implement new tech. Technology, it's never truly neutral. It shapes our behaviors, our mindsets, in ways we might not even realize.
It's like each platform has its own personality, and you got to choose the one that's compatible with your teams, like their DNA.
Exactly. Do your research, talk to people who are already using these platforms, and try to get a sense of the culture surrounding each one. Which community feels more like your company, your values, your goals? Which one inspires you and your team to do your best work? Does one platform encourage more collaboration and knowledge sharing, while the other one maybe leads to a more siloed approach? Think about that.
It's not just picking a tool, it's picking a partner that's going to help you build the kind of culture you want to see in your company.
Precisely. And that can have a huge impact on everything from, how engaged your employees are to innovation, even your long-term success.
Wow, this has been such an insightful deep dive. I feel like we've really peeled back the layers of Workato and Boomi, not just looking at features and pricing, but those underlying philosophies and how they could impact your company culture.
We've definitely given you a solid foundation to make an informed decision. But as always, the journey doesn't stop here. Keep learning, keep experimenting, and keep pushing those boundaries of what you can do with IPS.
And if you discover any amazing integrations, automation hacks, be sure to share them with us. We love hearing those creative ways you're using these platforms to transform your businesses. Until next time, happy integrating. So we've explored Workato and Boomi, features, cost, even like the company culture angle. But before we wrap up, let's zoom out even further. Think big picture, long-term implications of your choice. Could picking one platform over the other subtly influence how your team works, the skills they end up focusing on?
Yeah, it's a really interesting point. Technology, it's not just a neutral tool. It shapes how we work, how we think. A platform that's super user-friendly, that might actually foster more experimentation, agility, but a more complex platform might mean you're relying more heavily on those specialized experts, so maybe a slower pace of change.
It's almost like each platform has its own personality, right? And you want to choose one that fits your team's strengths, encourages the kind of growth you're going for.
Exactly. Let's say your company is all about empowering non-technical teams. Give them the tools to build their own automations, right? A platform like Workato, with those visual workflows, that ease of use, that might really reinforce that value.
But if your company prides itself on that deep technical expertise, those highly customized integrations, Boomi's power and flexibility, even with a steeper learning curve, that might be a better fit culturally.
Exactly. It's about thinking beyond just the immediate problem. What are the ripple effects of your tech choices? How will it impact your team, the skills they develop over time?
Man, this has been such an insightful deep dive. I feel like we've really peeled back the layers of Workato and Boomi. Not just features, pricing, but the philosophies, the potential cultural impacts.
Absolutely. And hopefully, we've given you a good framework for evaluating these platforms. But the real learning starts when you actually jump in, Get your hands dirty, play around with those free trials, talk to other users, get their perspective.
And there's no right answer. It's all about finding the IPS solution that fits your needs, your priorities, and even your company culture.
And if you find yourself kind of gravitating towards one platform, trust your gut. Probably means you found something that really aligns with your values where you want to go.
So as you embark on your IPS journey, remember, keep learning, keep experimenting, and most importantly, have fun. Enjoy connecting the dots, automating your world. Until next time, happy integrating.